Welcome to On the Chain.
Let's kick this thing off. This is a great article, and why, Chip? And we're actually going to get into, also there's a video interview. We'll get into that in a little bit, and that was Garlinghouse on Gasparino. But for right now, I just want to go through the article that was posted. This came up, and I think you guys are going to like this one because this is very, very timely. So let's see if we can pull this up. This is Ripple CEO says that the landmark lawsuit is going to be decided by a judge. He doesn't think it's going all the way to trial. Now, this is a massive statement. This is coming from somebody on the inside, which is the CEO of Ripple, Brad Garlinghouse. I like this statement here. We're not going to play this video right yet. But Garlinghouse, I think the SEC is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. So we got to get into and figure out exactly, what that is. But this is really, really massive. I look at this, and Chip, one of the things that we've heard from many within the community is this is going to settlement. And and we could be wrong, and we have a steak dinner on this, but I could be wrong that it goes to settlement. I just don't see at this point, from a political perspective, how the SEC can rail on companies for this long with this notion of enforcement, this notion from the current chair that they are above it all, and they're the ones that are in control. They're in the seat. They're in the captain's chair. I don't know how you remove the captain from the captain's chair, even though he might have been self-anointed and self-appointed. It makes it very, very difficult, Chip. Before we get through this article, I mean, so just this statement right here: cryptocurrency trial of the century.
Right. It's what's amazing is the fact that, it was when it started, it was just a bunch of ragtag community members, the XRP community. Then it kind of branched out. And I think one of the most important parts of this SEC, this v Ripple filing, has been that this is not an attack on Ripple. It's not an attack on XRP. It's an attack on the entire crypto, space at large. And finally, people are recognizing that. And it's amazing to see the coverage on Fox Business that they're giving it. By the way, CNBC, completely mute on it. But again, who watches CNBC? Let's be honest. It was a player at one time 20 years ago. People have pretty much forgot about it. It's really become a shill network for, let's say, a certain sort of way of thinking. Would you think that's a proper assessment?
I think so. I wasn't sure it was still a thing.
Well, that's the other part too. It's like, is it still a thing? But what's exciting about this though is like this cryptocurrency trial of the century. Yeah, okay, this century, we're only 22 years into it. Okay, fine. But honestly, it probably might be, even if it happened last century, it would have been the cryptocurrency trial of that century, because it's massive and the impact is massive.
It's massive on this space, Chip. And $15 billion in lost, either realized or unrealized gains, in this market. Just massive. A lot of turmoil, and we're talking about just off of retail holders of XRP. But this trial also has far-reaching impact on the cryptocurrency as a whole. So I like that. Hans loaded. The facts are not in dispute. No jury trial required. And that's a perfect statement. And Garlinghouse, coming from that exact mindset, is really great. So in this interview, we're talking about the SEC. He said he expects the case will not go to trial. He believes the judge has enough evidence to rule from the bench. I don't see, Chip, anywhere in this statement. See if I can get that highlighted. I don't see anything in that statement that he says, I expect that we're going to settle because the parties have come together to expect some form of settlement. I see that he's stating here that it won't go to trial because the judge has enough evidence already to rule from the bench, not settle from the bench.
Jeff, well said, spot on. And this is funny because this is why we have the slowest growing YouTube channel, period, right? Because we come from a different opinion set, a little more, our opinions vary from a lot of the crypto influencers, especially in the XRP community, that have been going settlement today, settlement tomorrow, settlement at 3:45 today. And that's great. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Jeff, I would love a settlement. I don't think that we are in the opinion that a settlement wouldn't work. Just don't see it. So you got to call it the way we see it. It's kind of, we've been sort of on the opposite side of what everybody has been saying, and big news and breaking news and its settlement. Look, I would love to see something pop across my Twitter feed or my iPhone that says, hey, it's official. The SEC has settled with Ripple, and here's what it looks like. But you're right. But based on everything we've seen, and then we got to go back to the Garlinghouse statements early on. Yep. Early on, he said, we tried before they dropped the suit to work something out with them. They had all this discovery going back 2 years, and then they lifted that 5-year rule so they could go back even further. That's called full transparency and cooperation. One thing Ripple and Brad Garlinghouse have been very good about is the transparency. They allowed discovery to go back further than is legally allowed, because they're like, hey, we got nothing to hide. We're going to be full transparency. And he also said, if you remember, that the only way that they would settle is if the SEC came out and said today's XRP, not a security. Now, Jeff, if the SEC comes out and says that, and says, okay, let's fine you because it's a gray area, and if you guys agree to a settlement, pay us $100 million, for the 2013 sales because maybe we feel like it wasn't sufficiently decentralized, whatever. Are they going to come out, Jeff, really, and say that today's XRP, completely decentralized, not a security, it's a commodity, we won't touch it, and it will all be handled by the CFTC?
Yeah, I don't see that happening, anywhere in the near future. And this is, part of the issue, and so there's just so much that's going on here. And man, if, and this is a big if, we saw the SEC showing any kind of, bending or, any kind of a good, I should say, if we saw any goodwill coming from the SEC towards any of these other companies, and, the cases and even the language that's being used, because we're talking about an entity, the SEC, and we've talked about this so many times before, but we're talking about the SEC, the entity that is in place to protect the interest of retail investors, not to enforce and be punitive against companies, but to make sure that companies are adhering to the rules of the road, and they are not taking advantage of their retail investors. Hence the notion of the security, hence, the outcome of the Howey test, and, and then moving forward. But even from that point, with the Howey test forward, they're going back and they're referencing case law, but they're not referencing law written by Congress to make clear statement to say that this is what a security is, and spelling it out with a congressional act. The SEC has been given certain authorities, certain powers. At this point in time, we fast forward from 1946 to now, it seems the SEC is in complete overreach. But the problem is that it's not just the SEC in complete overreach. We've seen multiple government agencies, and we have multiple unelected officials sitting in positions of power that have anointed themselves to be rule makers. And we've seen that with Gary Gensler, and it's very dangerous. It's, it's unconstitutional. It goes against the fabric of everything that this country is based on. It's problematic. And we're starting to see that in the outcome of this case. So again, if there was any kind of goodwill coming from the SEC towards these other crypto companies, but I don't see it. We don't see it in this case, Chip, and we haven't seen it in the language of the investors either. They keep saying they're there to protect the investors, but yet they do everything that's contrary to helping investors. It just it doesn't make sense.
And the funny part about that whole thing is that when we talk about how this will be chosen and decided, here's the question I have for you though, Jeff. Suppose judge comes back and says, look, okay, SEC, multiple issues here, it's not a security. So what does the SEC then go appeal that to a higher court, not take the loss, but then go ahead and appeal? And then we get this thing wound up again for another, who knows how long.
That's a great question. And man, with the way the mindset of Gary Gensler, right now, that would be really trying. Could you imagine, the case settles, or, there's an outcome. The judge has a decision, the court has a decision. And then the SEC says, you know what, we're coming after you again. We don't agree with this. I would really hope that with that outcome, that the SEC would just let it lie, and it doesn't get elevated to the next court. I really think it would be, so critical at that point, to say, hey, you know what, SEC, you've been shown to be wrong, and it's time to end it. It's really crazy.
It's
I mean,
time.
look here, it is time. I mean, here's so this was the interview with the claimant countdown. Garlinghouse said trials and juries are really to determine if there's uncertainty about facts. The facts aren't in dispute here. The law is in dispute. So
Correct.
that is an amazing statement. And that's something that Hans Loaded had thrown up. It's not the facts are indisputable, right? Because facts are facts. They're not changing. It's very clear. But it's the law, and there's a lack of clarity. And then the ambiguous nature of that is what the SEC wants. But then the SEC, the dispute here is the SEC thinks that they have the authority. I shouldn't say the SEC. Gary Gensler thinks that he has the authority to write law. And that's not the case. And then Chip here, it says, lawyers close to the case tell Fox Business that Judge Torres likely won't make a ruling on the summary judgment motions until next year.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.